that make you nervous?
You're an escaped convict, trained by mob accountants. Your clients are drug cartels, money launderers.
Is that a yes?
Ray King has been murdered. Do you like puzzles, Mr. Wolf?
Are you ready? Yeah.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the big ticket interview for The Accountant 2. And I'm thrilled to be joined by the director and cast of by far my favorite action movie that I've seen in a while. I had no idea that I was suddenly going to be wrapped up in a franchise like this. So, Gavin, my first question is to you. When did you get the spark? Like, hey, we could actually turn this into a sequel and really, like, deepen the mythology, expand the world, and get all these, new characters kind of a deeper level of understanding.
I had the idea to expand it when I was shooting the first one. I didn't say anything to anybody until I got into post, and then during post I started having the conversations with Bill. Then I spoke to Ben about it, and we started kicking the tires on ideas and things like that. And then obviously we had to see how the film performed, and fortunately we had a really great experience, and it did well at the box office, and that sort of opened the door for a second movie.
Yeah, and it garnered this like really loyal following. I think this movie has more fans than people realize, and so when you're going to make a sequel, it's so cool to look at all four of y'all because it's not just like one person's story with a bunch of side characters. Each one of y'all have like your own through line, and then we have Jon and Ben with this like brother dynamic. Did y'all realize what you had with the first movie, or was that something that you sort of discovered, wow, we have this chemistry that works from an action standpoint and from a comedic standpoint going into the second one?
I mean, what I was really interested in, and like Gavin and Bill kind of constructed and focused on, was, hey, the emotional core for your characters and be this relationship with Braxton. And I had such a great time with Jon, such an admirer and a fan, and really loved and connected. I love working with and connected with Jon, even though it's such a kind of brief experience, and was like, this is a guy I want to keep working with. So the idea of deepening and like that was really appealing. I've done a couple of other movies with Gavin, which I'm hugely proud of, which were really meaningful experiences for me. So it all made a lot of sense. And what I really love about what Gavin and Bill did was exactly what you said, which is it's not a central character with other less dimensional characters. Like every character is given an appropriate due, an appropriate complexity, and it made it really joyful and I think much more interesting to be in a movie with wholly fleshed out characters played by three actors whom I really admire and like, and it was a really satisfying, fun experience. So I think I'm glad you liked it.
Yeah, and I realized watching Cynthia's first scene, I'm like, oh, we're gonna get deep into some of this stuff because you have a lot to juggle. You have this sort of new job that you're getting your feet wet in, this new level of responsibility, and then you also have to look at these two. And I don't want to say it's like Step Brothers because it's much more serious than that, but
it's a little bit.
It's a little like that. And so you're trying to walk this line of like, well, I have to play it by the book, but they also kind of know what they're doing. So how are you able to wrap your mind around your character's psyche?
Yeah, I mean, it was interesting because when I got the script, I actually didn't really have a sense of how Mary Beth was going to factor into things. And that was exciting for me because as I was reading it, it was like, oh, okay. I mean, I'm like really in there. And not only that, I'm navigating between frick and frack over here. But I personally love that in addition to the action and the mystery and the intrigue, that there's humor and heart. I think that's, to me, what kind of elevates this and sets it apart from similar movies. There's much more humor than I expected, but the humor comes from, I think, very honest place. And it's interesting, again, to see these characters interact with one another. But they're all sort of driven by a common goal, and they all have their very sort of like, focused way of going about it. So I think it was just a lot of fun. It was sort of like trying to find the fun in that, even though it, is they're all very intense in their methodology, for sure.
I mean, can I just speak to the humor though? Because what I discovered with these guys was, I think maybe the second scene on the first night where these guys worked together, I had them in a two-shot in the motel room, and we had met and worked out the relationship, and we had a lot of conversations. It was the first time rolling on these guys, and the rhythm and the timing and how these guys started to play off each other. Day one, I was like, and I remember when we finished, I'm like, no coverage, no coverage, keeping it everything two-shot. And I always tried to keep things in two shots with these guys because they just had this rhythm and a flow and an emotional line between the way they just played off of each other. It's like they've been doing it for years. And the other thing that these guys did was there's a lot. Once I started to realize how, first of all, they knew their character so well that we just thought it's like we do the scene as like just go play, guys. And these guys started. I mean, there's so many improvisational moments.
I was going to ask that. How much is improv and how much is on the page?
There's a fair amount of improv in the movie.
We had a great time. I mean, it's true that like really both of us know and love Gavin and are comfortable. Felt safe, felt great. Kind of that helps to have had the movie in a way be a few years ago, and so you have some distance, but you kind of know it. And then I was like, we were saying to somebody else, it's a weird thing. You get lucky with chemistry, whether it's like a romantic lead or in this case, it's like actually in some ways harder to play like close, deep, brother, deep friends, like.
And you're in conflict with each other.
Yeah, which is so much a part of those relationships. It was a gift, man. Part of it is I love Jon. I admire him, respect him. I so trust Gavin. But as Jon said, sometimes that doesn't translate on screen. I don't know what I just had a great time. I got lucky, and I felt that I was like, this feels great. And it was easy. Weirdly for me, like the stuff that I've been the most proud of, paradoxically, the thing I feel I'm doing is like, this is kind of too easy. I should be working harder, but there's something connected about the way it flows and the ease and the comfort and having the people around in the environment Gavin set up and the intelligence, the humanity in Bill's script. And
also you guys knew it was very clear they knew the character. Like there were so many behavioral details that you guys both brought to the roles that you don't write those things. They just start inhabiting the characters, and a lot of the humor came out of not scripted lines. Some of it just came out of behavior.
It's all like rooted in two people trying to connect with each other, and the human foibles of like the way we try to connect and miss often, and how it's hard, and then you feel self-conscious, and you try again, and it's someone's and that is funny because you're like, yes, I've been there. You know what I mean? And that's the kind of. I think that's kind of what we tapped. It was just fun.
And never trying to be funny. They're never trying to be funny.
No, it wasn't like making it. Was
there's no winking.
It
going
felt
on.
very effortless in a good way. And it kind of reminded me like if my brother and I happened to want to become assassins, like that's sort of the way it would work. But the danger with this movie is that you as the audience member get comfortable and you're like, oh, these guys going back and forth. And then this badass comes on screen. And I know you and I was horrified of you. But there's so much more to you too. Like the way that it's fitting that we're doing this interview in Texas right now where there's really good 7-layer dip everywhere you go. That's what this movie is, because on its surface it just felt like a cool 90s action movie that we all grew up loving. And even with your character, there's so many more levels to it. So Daniella, how do you play that like killer like T-1000 kind of mentality on the outside, but there's so much more going on deep inside?
It was, on the one hand, it was really easy, but then on the other hand, I was kind of afraid of like just being a boring T-1000. I was like, or just like looking like a soccer mom chasing people down. I was like, how do I make this look cool?
Those kids would get right to the minivan.
I did not say you were at risk of that.
They're eating all the orange slices you give them.
But I spent a lot of time with Gavin having a lot of conversations about, things that, I'll be honest, a lot of times when people do backstory stuff, sometimes there are times where I think it's kind of like a waste of time. In this case, I needed that. I needed to pull from something. I needed to make it deeper. And I had so many conversations with Gavin about like, what does this chick do on a Saturday night? Where is she coming from? Who is she hanging out with? Because I actually needed those things to pull from, which I don't normally do, but I did in this case. But then also it was kind of fun to just play someone who's like so zero. That was kind of refreshing. And I don't know, there's probably a little bit of rage put in there somewhere. So I don't know, it was really fun. It was fun, and it was nice to play someone who's a woman and formidable and really smarter than everybody else and dangerous.
Yeah, and like with each one of your characters, because we get so deep into your story, you each have at least one or two like killer action sequences. So I'm always thinking about how did they train? How did they prepare for that? As somebody who a few weeks out of the year is a fitness enthusiast, what was it like getting ready for these scenes? And whoever wants to start the ball rolling can jump in, like the physical preparation it
Cynthia,
takes.
You killed it. You really went out.
Yeah.
Well, thank you. I mean, I feel like, it's like, I always say, like, being embarrassed is a really powerful motivator. Like, you don't want to get to the day where it's time to film the action sequence, and then it's like you're just shamed because it's like, I'm not ready for this. So we started very early, and we started with our wonderful stunt department led by Fern, and first of all, it was just like getting back into your body. I mean, for me, it was just like, kind of. I'd probably been kind of sitting on the couch eating bonbons for like a hot minute, and then suddenly you're like, oh, okay. So
I'll say this too, during our sequence, on camera, yes, when you're the predator, right, and you're going after them, but what people don't tell you is that all the physical capability you need to take a hit or to fling back or whatever, like Cynthia was like, I mean, she's dying in that scene, and she was like killing it. Like that part, getting it beating is often more exhausting than looking cool.
As a guy who's been more on the receiving end of punches than on the throwing end, it does burn a lot of calories that way too.
You can attest to that.
Not to say she didn't defend herself, but in the scene. Yeah.
Hashtag true.
No, it's man, it's rough.
Jon, you had a scene that really just like, it tickled me because I hadn't seen you quite like this before, and it's when we get to, I guess, reintroduce to your character, and you're just having a moment to yourself, and it's early on in the film, and we see the way that Ben's character sort of like goes about his day to day and prepares for his career. And then we see you, and you're on the road somewhere, and you're just by yourself, and you got a thing that you're emotionally working through. I'm just imagining you and Gavin just being in that room, filming that scene, and just having the time of your lives. I don't know if it was more embarrassing for you or fun or.
No, a real joy, man. A real gift. I love Gav. Like I love Gavin as a director. I love him in life, and he was one of the first guys in this business to really believe in me, and he really like took a shot with me, and to be in a movie with Ben, and he's always kind of been that for me, and now to sort of with that scene to kind of like, he is such a digger, there's this thing about like calling this woman about this dog, and that I just want the dog, and it all kind of blends with like the whole sort of like what's going on with this guy that he hasn't gotten this freaking call in 8 years, and how lonely he is. And Gavin has the courage and the fortitude to just say, hey, we're gonna set up some cameras and just go live in that and just go deal with that. And I mean, it was hours, and all kinds of stuff happened that day, and you don't get those kinds of gifts very often with a filmmaker on a big movie like this, and I'm just enormously
But we did meet we met like 2 hours before crew call.
Yes, we did.
And he just started like playing, and I just had my iPhone, and he was improvising and doing all this different stuff, and we started to find all the best like what potentially could be the best moments without trying to like get him to spend too much energy, just like figuring out what it could be. And then it was just like I just kind of just said, "Go do your thing, Jon," and he just went and did his thing. And it was.
So he's got some blackmailable moments on his iPhone from you.
Otherwise, you're not doing it right.
Yeah, right. What are we doing? Yeah.
But you take like a scene like that or a day of shooting like that where it's so loose and kind of fun. Gavin, how do you switch back into the action sequences where everything is just so precise and dialed in? What is your main goal? What do you want to achieve the most when you're shooting one of those big action sequences that we see in the movie?
Well, if we're referring to the third act with Brax and Christian, and it's not just me, it was the three of us. Well, we really had our GPS, because you choreograph the fights and the shoot, and it's all like a dance, right? You're just doing it in steps, right? But what we were so highly cognizant of was the emotional line between the two of these guys and how they work together. And that's really, so inside of the action, which is, it's sort of mechanical, just how you just choreograph everything, but it was really like the behavior and the humanity and the life between these two. And that's what we were driving towards in the third act, as these guys were trying to fix it with each other. Once we got to that third act, and there's the moment in the Airstream where, and it's a thing in families. Sometimes all you have to do is just say, I'm sorry, and it can kind of like just eliminate so much
It's that easy and it's that hard, right?
Exactly. But once that
Some of us,
happened,
it takes decades.
but once that happened, then for us it was really about just tracking how they work together.
Well, Gavin, what I really think is the essential thing and why I love working with Gavin, because whatever the genre is, like it's an entree into a story about people with which we want to connect and identify and feel compassion, etc. So like what he's doing, it was never about, like there's some approach that's action for its own mechanical sake, which is, I believe, when it feels hollow, is like you can make a car flip as many times as you want or do all sorts of acrobatics, but like, and one gets numb to that at a certain point. Like, and what Gavin was never about like building an action scene. It was always in terms of the emotional relationship between these two people, what's happening and how are they like needing one another, relying on one another, communicating with one another. And the whole action stuff stemmed from that, which was a very different experience than many that I've had, where it's just, here's where you hold the gun, and then we're going to do this bit, and then you do the roll, and then the thing goes off. This was about two people, which I think the best stuff, whether you go back to, just passed away, Gene Hackman was one of our great actors. You look at French Connection, it's actually not that the car chase is so good. It's that Hackman grabs you, and you feel connected to him when he's kind of behind the steering wheel. Like, to me, that's actually what does it. People go, oh my God, and not taking away from it, that's great and everything. But I believe that that's the difference. If it's about something and that you understand it emotionally and it makes an emotional sense to you, then it's part of the language of the whole story. And that's, in my experiences making movies with Gavin, the third time, everything is always about that. And then on top of that is what's the genre, how we layering, how's the specific story. And that is, if you're an actor, like an enormous gift. It's really doing a lot of your work for you. Absolutely.
Danielle and Cynthia, I'm curious for you two, when you're flipping the pages, and you mentioned just reading your character, how much of a page turner that must have been for you. Just like, how are we doing on this one? Like, did y'all realize how deep the world that they've built is? Or was that sort of a new experience? Because just me as a viewer, I'm watching this and I'm like, oh my God, it felt more like a Bond or a Mission Impossible in the sense that it's not just the folks going on the mission. There's like a whole team, so to speak, that's helping us out. And that is its own storyline. So did y'all realize how deep this was? Or was that just after you're done with everything, you're like, oh wow, we really did something special here?
I mean, I remember as we're sitting here and talking about it, I remember getting all the way to the end of filming, and you remember this because I was like blubbering, and I just realized that we got to the end, and it just hit me how special it felt to sort of get to be part of something like this. You always are hopeful that you get a role that allows you to kind of even just put a little bit of yourself in there. Like I think I'm always trying to subversively find some way to navigate things that I'm thinking about in real life and kind of hiding them in this character. And so this always feels like such a gift for me, because it's like you don't always get to revisit a character years later. This is the first time I've got to do that. So I think that's why it just felt so special, and I think why I got so emotional when we got to the end of filming, because it was like, like I just was really relishing it, because it's a rarity, and especially to get a character, especially for females, it's like you want to have a female character in a world like this where you really get to do something, and it's not just in service to the male character, that you get to be your own fully realized person. So I'm really proud of getting to portray a character like Mary Beth, and you're rooting for her. You're rooting for this woman, which is cool.
You're the good guy.
Yeah.
You're easy to root for, Daniela.
Yeah.
We'll talk. Were you emotional when it ended, or did you just go to a bar and beat the crap out of a bunch of guys? Like, what was the celebration?
Yeah. Killed a bunch of people. I kind of knew what was up, because his movies are awesome.
Yeah, they're pretty good.
It's like, I'm like, all right, this makes sense. And it's his second go, right? So if you have a really talented filmmaker, oftentimes, more often than not, the sequel, the story's already established, right? So now they can play and have fun. So I kind of knew I was in good hands. The part was like, no pun intended, but the part was like killer. I was like, I've never seen this before, right? And we got to shoot in LA. So it's like, this movie's gonna be awesome, but I'll have the experience of like, it's like I'm in the 90s again, and I get to shoot a kick movie in Los Angeles. Like, when is that ever going to happen?
There's a little
Yeah,
bit of
Newsom.
collateral for me too, like because I live in LA too, and so I'm like, oh, I know where that is. Like,
Yeah,
oh,
no, it's awesome. I love that.
room.
But I felt like, just based on all the meetings and stuff that I had and how much people cared, and people who made this movie are people who love movies and they're good at what they do. And also, like, everyone was top notch. I can't say that about everything that I do. So I knew what was up.
All right, so look, we love making movies. We love doing this kind of stuff. I'm going to put my cards on the table. I need more accountant movies in my life. I want a whole firm of accountants. Is that what maybe you're thinking in
You
the
don't
back
hear
of your
that much.
Especially not this time of year. I mean, we're getting into tax season, so is there a world where we could see more? We just have to, get the folks out there to the theaters, and then maybe we get to explore and play in this world a little more?
I'd love to. We had this group. It would be wonderful. Yeah, and you say, I hope. This is a movie that I've noticed over the years, like you say, the intervening years. Like, so often people will come up to me, and the movie that they bring up is The First Accountant, and I really started to feel like people. I was like, wow, people really have an affinity for this. I mean, even went so far as to do some research, and found out that although it was the sort of nascent days of streaming, this movie way over-indexed. They overperformed similar movies that did similarly at the theatrical box office. So clearly there is an audience that's been building. I would love. I mean, this is a joy for me. This is a wonderful experience, top to bottom. I would love to do it again with this group, but you'll have to go on Fandango and buy tickets.
God, he's good.
Vote with your wallet.
Stole my line, man. Wrapping things up, it is tax season, as we mentioned. I am an independent contractor. There's a lot of paperwork. Which one of you that I'm staring at right now would feel most comfortable handling my taxes for me?
Definitely.
I mean, it depends what comfortable. Would I want to? I know Fate's a nice guy.
John both pointed right at you.
Definitely. Yeah.
I mean, yeah.
Definitely.
This is called the low bar crew.
It's mostly write-offs anyway. Y'all are going to want to check out The Accountant 2 in theaters. You can grab your tickets, as Ben said, at Fandango right now. This has been the Big Ticket interview for the whole gang here. I'm Mark Ellis, and we'll catch you next time.